This wasn't just a test. It was a statement, and not the kind you put in a press release. Because when Checo Perez stepped out of Cadillac's brand new Formula One car, after its first public run at Silverstone, what he said caught everyone off guard. He didn't talk about lap times. He didn't talk about setup. He talked about pressure. He talked about redemption. And most of all, he talked about how this car, this moment, had lit a fire in him. But that wasn't the shocking part. What followed hinted at something deeper. Something the team didn't want to say out loud. And if you connect the dots between the engine, the weather, and the silence from Ferrari, you'll realize this debut wasn't smooth. It may have already revealed a much bigger problem. It was cold, even by Silverstone standards. Wet asphalt, low visibility, and a wind that felt like it belonged in November, not January. At first glance, it didn't look like much. A matte black car, no logos, no livery, just shadows under the overhang. But for those in the garage, this wasn't just another test. It was Cadillac's first real step onto Formula One tarmac. And behind the wheel, Checo Perez. No sponsors, no team radio broadcast. Just him, helmet on, sitting in a machine that was never supposed to exist. Not this soon. The engine was silent at first. A delay, then another. And for a few uncomfortable minutes, nothing moved. Engineers circled the rear of the car. Laptops open. Eyes on diagnostic screens. The mood tight. When the car finally rolled out, there was no applause. Just the whine of the hybrid system fighting the cold, and a Ferrari engine trying to wake up in the rain. Checo completed a handful of laps. Not fast, not aggressive, but enough. Then he came back in, pulled off the gloves, unclipped the helmet, and walked straight into the garage. Expression unreadable. And that's where everything changed. Because when the session ended, and Checo finally spoke, he didn't sound like a driver reading from a press release. He sounded like a man who had just seen something he wasn't ready for, and said something the team may not have expected. When the cameras finally caught up with him, Checo wasn't smiling the way you'd expect after a historic debut. He looked calm, controlled, but there was something in his tone that didn't quite match the script. He said the experience was emotional, that it reminded him of why he fell in love with racing, that driving the car had lit a fire inside him. On the surface, it sounded like hope, a new beginning, the rebirth of a career that had at times been boxed in by politics, contracts, and team hierarchies. But then he shifted. He said, there's a long road ahead. And that's where the mood changed. Because in Formula One, that phrase doesn't mean logistics. It doesn't mean weather or miles or marketing. It means the car isn't ready. Or worse, it's not what he was promised. And for a veteran like Checo, a driver who's been on the wrong side of performance gaps before, those words aren't casual. They're a signal, not to fans, not to journalists, but to the people back at the factory. Because behind the polite phrasing, behind the carefully managed optimism, was something else entirely. A warning. Up until now, the narrative was simple. Cadillac debuts, Checo drives, engine starts, success. But here's where it flips. Because what wasn't shown in the highlight clips, what didn't make it into the press briefings, was how close this test came to unraveling. Sources inside the garage confirmed that before the car even left pit lane, there were multiple failed sync attempts. The hybrid system refused to calibrate. The throttle maps kept locking the ICE in idle. And the delay? Not weather, not routine. It was conflict between Cadillac's software and Ferrari's engine protocol. Two systems, built by two companies, thousands of miles and philosophies apart. And here's the twist. This wasn't supposed to be a Cadillac problem, because Ferrari provided the engine. They provided integration support. They knew the timeline. They approved the installation. But when the tests started to go sideways, Ferrari went silent. No statement, no clarification. And for the first time since this partnership began, Cadillac looked alone. And Checo? He felt it. Insiders say he spent more time in the garage than in the car. And not because he wanted to, because he had to. He wasn't testing lap time. He was testing stability, confidence. And when he stepped out, he knew exactly how far off they still were. That's the part no one filmed. The part that tells you this debut wasn't just difficult. It was exposed. You would think a debut like this, Checo Perez, Cadillac, Ferrari power, would come with noise. But what followed today's run was silence. No interview from Ferrari. No detailed press release from Cadillac. And from the FIA, not even a line acknowledging the car had taken to the track. That's not normal, because in Formula One, firsts are celebrated even when they don't go perfectly. But this time, the tone was cautious. And in some corners of the paddock, it was tense. What no one is explaining, at least not on the record, is how unstable this partnership may already be. Cadillac is backed by General Motors, a global giant with no history of waiting around. They've spent over a year building infrastructure, recruiting from across the grid, and preparing a team to enter as early as 2026. But their entire technical base relies on one thing: Ferrari's engine. And today, that engine didn't integrate cleanly. It didn't respond well in cold conditions. And it didn't deliver the kind of feedback you need in a first rollout. That's not just a teething problem. That's a red flag. Because if this issue was expected, Ferrari would have said so. Cadillac would have managed expectations. The narrative would have been shaped ahead of time. Instead, we got half answers, soft language, and Checo standing in front of the cameras, saying things that didn't match the optimism in the press kit. When that happens in F1, you're not looking at miscommunication. You're looking at internal disagreement. And right now, no one's explaining who's responsible for what happened today, or what comes next if it happens again. Checo's words weren't explosive. They were measured, polite, but that's what made them so important. Because when a veteran like Perez chooses his words carefully, it usually means he's seen something the team isn't ready to say. And if that long road ahead becomes a pattern, the consequences won't just fall on Cadillac. They'll fall on Ferrari too. Because if this engine, Ferrari's new generation hybrid for 2026, fails to integrate properly into a customer chassis, then every team planning to run, it starts asking difficult questions. How customizable is it? How responsive under pressure? How dependent on Ferrari's own systems? And if the answer to those questions is not much, then the 2026 season gets political, fast. Cadillac isn't here to be a second-tier team. They're here to compete. They're backed by GM. They're willing to spend. And they've made it clear. They expect results. But if Ferrari's engine only works inside a Ferrari-designed chassis, Cadillac might not wait around. That opens the door to friction, to public frustration, to the kind of internal pressure that can tear a program apart before it even gets approved for the grid. And Checo, he's not a rookie. He knows how fast time moves in Formula One. He's seen what happens when a team falls behind early and starts chasing stability instead of speed. And that's why his reaction matters. Because when he says the car lit a fire in him, that's emotion. But when he says there's work to do, that's experience. He's sending a message to the engineers, to the boardrooms, to the paddock. This can work, but not like this. And that single sentence might determine how fast Cadillac moves, how deeply Ferrari supports them, and whether this car is still running or replaced before 2026 even begins. So now we know. Cadillac has debuted. The car ran. Checo drove it. And the headlines will say success. But the truth is Messier. Because underneath the rollout, beneath the quotes and controlled excitement, there's a fracture. One that no one wants to name yet. Ferrari delivered an engine. Cadillac delivered a car. But what today revealed is that the two are not yet one. They ran, but they didn't sync. And in 2026, with hybrid systems that rely on perfect calibration, not syncing doesn't just mean time lost. It means failure waiting to happen. Checo knows it. He's seen it before. At Force India, at Red Bull, at teams that moved fast, made noise, but couldn't hold the project together when the pieces didn't fit. And now, he's standing in a car that could define the next chapter of his career, or quietly end it. Because this car, this black, anonymous machine in the Silverstone rain, is more than just a prototype. It's a signal, a warning shot, to the grid, to the FIA, to the sport itself. Cadillac isn't asking for permission anymore. They're on track. They're testing. And if they solve the problems Checo hinted at, they'll be in. For real. But if they don't, if Ferrari's engine stays temperamental, if integration issues linger, if GM's patience wears thin, then today's debut won't be remembered as the start of something big. It'll be remembered as the first quiet sign that this alliance was never built to last. And the next time Checo speaks, he may not be smiling.